The bus pulled into the city at 6:30 in the evening. The sky was turning orange and pink, the kind of sunset that makes everything look softer than it really is, but nothing felt soft for the woman sitting in the back row of that old bus. Her name was May, and she was 51 years old. She had been staring out the window for the last 3 hours, watching small towns turn into bigger towns, and bigger towns turn into this city she had never visited before. May worked as a cleaner at a middle school back home. She mopped floors, wiped down desks, and emptied trash cans. She had been doing this job for nearly 15 years. Her hands were rough from cleaning chemicals, and her back always ached by the end of each shift. But none of that mattered today. Today, she was not a cleaner. Today, she was a contestant. She clutched a folded piece of paper in her hands. It was her registration form for the regional star search competition. She had filled it out 3 months ago and almost threw it away twice, but something inside her would not let go. Something kept telling her to try. Just once. Just this once. The bus stopped, and people started getting off. May waited until everyone else had left before she slowly stood up. Her legs felt weak. Her heart was beating fast. She grabbed her small bag, the same one she used for grocery shopping, and stepped off the bus. The city was loud. Cars honked. People walked fast, like they all had somewhere important to be. May stood there for a moment, feeling very small. She looked at the address on her registration form and started walking. It took her 40 minutes to find the venue. It was a large building with bright lights and a big banner that said, "Regional Star Search," in gold letters. There were people everywhere. Young people, mostly. They wore fancy clothes and carried instrument cases. Some were practicing dance moves right there on the sidewalk. Others were singing scales, their voices smooth and trained. May looked down at her own clothes. She was wearing a dark blue dress that she had bought from a thrift store 2 weeks ago. It was the nicest thing she owned. But standing here among all these polished performers, she suddenly felt foolish. The dress did not fit quite right. It was a little too big around the shoulders and a little too tight around the waist. Her shoes were the same black flats she wore to work every day. They were comfortable, but they were not pretty. A young woman walked past her, talking loudly on her phone. "Yeah, I have been preparing for this for 6 months. Voice coach, dance lessons, the whole thing." She laughed. "This is going to be easy." May swallowed hard. She had not had any lessons. She had not prepared with any coach. She had only practiced alone. Late at night, in the empty hallways of the school after everyone else had gone home. She almost turned around right then. She almost walked back to the bus station and went home. But then she remembered why she came. She remembered all those nights when singing was the only thing that made her feel like herself. She remembered the way music filled up all the empty spaces inside her. And she kept walking. Inside the building, everything was even more overwhelming. There were cameras everywhere. People with clipboards rushed around, calling out names and numbers. A woman at a registration desk handed May a sticker with the number 47 on it and told her to wait in the holding area with the other contestants. The holding area was a large room filled with chairs. Most of them were taken by young, confident-looking people who seemed to belong here. May found an empty seat in the corner and sat down quietly. She kept her bag on her lap, holding it like a shield. The woman next to her glanced over. She was maybe 25, with perfect makeup and long, shiny hair. She looked at May's dress, then at her shoes, then at her face, and then she smiled. But it was not a kind smile. It was the kind of smile that said, "What are you doing here?" May pretended not to notice. She looked straight ahead and tried to breathe slowly. Hours passed. One by one, contestants were called to perform. Some came back looking happy. Others came back crying. A few did not come back at all, probably leaving through a different door, too embarrassed to face the others. Finally, a man with a clipboard called out, "Number 47. May's stomach dropped. She stood up on shaky legs and followed him down a long hallway. The sound of her flat shoes echoed against the floor. At the end of the hallway, there was a door. Behind that door, she could hear the muffled sound of an audience. "Wait here," the man said. "When you hear your name, walk out to the center of the stage. The microphone will be there. Good luck." He did not sound like he meant it. May stood alone behind that door. Her heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. She closed her eyes and thought about her mother, who had died 12 years ago. Her mother used to say, "May, you have a gift. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise." But so many people had told her otherwise. Her ex-husband, her old boss, even some of her own relatives. After a while, she had started to believe them. The door opened. Bright lights hit her face. She could not see the audience, but she could hear them. The murmuring, the shifting in seats. And then, as she walked out onto that stage, the murmuring changed. It became whispers, and some of those whispers were not kind. She heard someone laugh. Not loudly, but loud enough. She heard someone else say, "Oh, this should be interesting." The way they said it made clear they did not mean interesting in a good way. May reached the microphone. It stood there in the center of the stage, shiny and tall, like it was waiting to judge her too. She looked out at the audience. She still could not see their faces because of the lights, but she could feel their doubt. It pressed against her like a weight. The judges sat at a long table in front of the stage. There were 3 of them. A man in a suit who looked bored, a woman with red lipstick who was writing something on a notepad, and another man, older, with gray hair and tired eyes, who was leaning back in his chair like he had already made up his mind. "Whenever you are ready," the woman said, not looking up. May opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. Her throat was dry. Her hands were shaking. Somewhere in the audience, someone coughed. Someone else whispered something that made a few people chuckle. She thought about running. She thought about saying sorry and walking off that stage and never looking back. She thought about how stupid she was to think she could do this. A 51-year-old cleaning lady with no training, no fancy clothes, no right to be here. But then she thought about all the nights she had spent singing alone. All the years she had kept her voice hidden. All the dreams she had buried so deep she almost forgot they were there. And she decided that even if she failed, even if they laughed, even if this was the most embarrassing moment of her life, she was not going to leave without being heard. Not this time. She took a deep breath, nodded to the sound technician, and waited for the music to begin. To understand why May was standing on that stage, you have to go back 30 years. Back to a time when she was not a cleaning lady. Back to a time when people looked at her and saw something special. May grew up in a small town where nothing much ever happened. Her father worked at a factory, and her mother stayed home to raise May and her 2 younger brothers. They did not have much money, but they had enough. And they had music. Her mother loved to sing. She sang while cooking breakfast. She sang while hanging clothes on the line. She sang lullabies at night that made May feel like the world was a safe and beautiful place. And somewhere along the way, May started singing too. By the time she was 12, everyone in town knew about the girl with the voice. She sang at church every Sunday, and people would come early just to get a good seat. She sang at school events, and teachers would stand in the back with tears in their eyes. Her voice was not just pretty. It was powerful. It made people feel things they could not put into words. When May was 17, a music teacher from the city came to visit her school. He was looking for talented students to audition for a scholarship at a prestigious music academy. May's teacher recommended her right away. She auditioned in the school gymnasium, singing a song her mother had taught her. And the man from the city sat very still the entire time. When she finished, he did not clap. He just looked at her and said, "You have a gift that most people only dream of. Do not waste it." 3 weeks later, May received a letter. She had been accepted into the academy with a full scholarship. It was the happiest day of her life. She ran home holding that letter like it was made of gold, and her mother cried and hugged her and said, I always knew you were meant for something bigger. But life does not always care about our plans." 2 months before May was supposed to leave for the academy, her father had an accident at the factory. A machine malfunctioned, and he was badly hurt. He survived, but he could never work again. The medical bills piled up. Her mother tried to find work, but she had never had a job outside the home, and no one would hire her. May's younger brothers were still in school. Someone had to step up. May gave up her scholarship. She did not make a big announcement about it. She did not cry or complain. She just quietly wrote a letter to the academy, thanking them for the opportunity and explaining that she could no longer attend. Then she got a job at the local grocery store, stocking shelves and working the register. And she handed her entire paycheck to her mother every week. Her mother begged her to reconsider. "You can still go," she said. "We will figure something out." But May knew there was nothing to figure out. Her family needed her, and she could not leave them behind. Years passed. May's father slowly recovered, but he was never the same. He became quiet and distant, ashamed that he could not provide for his family anymore. Her mother grew tired, working small jobs here and there to help make ends meet. May kept working, kept helping, kept putting everyone else first. When she was 24, she met a man named Henry. He was a truck driver, a few years older than her. With a quick smile and an easy laugh. He made her feel noticed. He made her feel like maybe her life was not over after all. They got married 6 months later. At first, things were good. Henry was kind, and May thought she had found a partner who would support her dreams. But as the years went on, she realized that Henry did not really understand her. He did not understand why she still hummed melodies while washing dishes. He did not understand why she sometimes stayed up late, listening to music on the radio with her eyes closed. And he definitely did not understand why she still talked about singing. That was a long time ago. He would say whenever she brought it up, "You need to let it go. Focus on what is real." So May stopped talking about it. She stopped humming when he was around. She learned to make herself smaller, to fit into the life he wanted. They never had children, which was a sadness May carried quietly. Henry blamed her, and she accepted the blame, even though she was not sure it was true. Her mother passed away when May was 39. It was sudden. A heart attack in the middle of the night. May did not even get to say goodbye. At the funeral, she wanted to sing one of her mother's favorite songs, but when she opened her mouth, no sound came out. Her voice, the voice that had once filled churches and gymnasiums, was trapped somewhere deep inside her, and she could not find it. After that, May stopped singing altogether. It hurt too much. Every time she tried, she thought of her mother, and the grief was more than she could bear. Henry passed away 8 years later. It was not dramatic. He just got sick one winter and never got better. May took care of him until the end, the way she had taken care of everyone her whole life, and when he was gone, she found herself alone, in a quiet house with nothing but memories and regret. She was 47 years old. Her brothers had moved away and had families of their own. Her parents were gone. Her husband was gone. And she had spent so many years taking care of others that she did not know who she was anymore. She got the job at the middle school because she needed something to do. Cleaning was simple work. It did not require her to think too much or feel too much. She would arrive after the students left and spend her evenings mopping floors and wiping down lockers. The building was always empty and quiet, and May liked it that way. But sometimes, late at night, when she was sure no one else was around, she would start to hum. Softly at first. Just a few notes here and there. And then, one night, she started to sing. She sang in the empty hallways, her voice bouncing off the walls. She sang in the gymnasium, where her footsteps echoed and the sound traveled up to the high ceiling. She sang all the songs her mother used to sing, and for the first time in years, she did not feel alone. No one ever heard her. She made sure of that. But those late-night sessions became her secret. Her one small piece of joy in a life that had given her so little. One afternoon, about 4 months before she ended up on that stage, May was walking home from the grocery store when a piece of paper blew against her leg. She reached down to brush it away, but something made her stop. It was a flyer for the regional Star Search competition. "Do you have what it takes?" It said. "Auditions open to all ages. May stared at that flyer for a long time. She thought about throwing it away. She thought about all the reasons why it was a stupid idea. She was too old. She had no training. She had not performed in front of anyone in over 30 years. People would laugh at her. But she also thought about her mother. She thought about that letter from the music academy, the one she had kept in a shoebox under her bed all these years. She thought about every dream she had buried, every song she had swallowed, every time she had made herself small so that someone else could feel big. And something inside her, something that had been sleeping for a very long time, finally woke up. She folded the flyer carefully and put it in her pocket. That night, she filled out the registration form. She almost threw it away twice. But in the end, she mailed it. And now here she was, standing on a stage, with bright lights in her face, and doubt pressing in from every direction. She was terrified. But she was also, for the first time in decades, exactly where she was supposed to be. The music began, and for a moment, May forgot how to breathe. It was a slow melody, soft and sad, the kind that creeps into your chest before you even realize it. She had chosen this song carefully. It was the same song her mother used to sing to her when she was a little girl. The same song she had sung at her audition for the music academy all those years ago. The same song she had wanted to sing at her mother's funeral but could not. The introduction played for 8 long seconds. 8 seconds that felt like a lifetime. May could hear the audience shifting in their seats. She could feel their impatience, their doubt, their readiness to be disappointed. Somewhere in the back, someone whispered something, and a few people laughed quietly. She gripped the microphone stand with both hands. Her palms were sweating. Her mouth was dry. Every part of her wanted to run, but then she closed her eyes. And she thought about her mother. She thought about the way her mother used to hum while braiding her hair. She thought about the kitchen in their old house. The smell of bread baking. The sunlight coming through the window. She thought about her mother's hands, rough from work but always gentle. She thought about the last time she saw her, just an ordinary Tuesday, not knowing it would be the last. And when May opened her mouth, she did not sing for the judges. She did not sing for the audience. She did not sing to prove anything to anyone. She sang for her mother. The first note came out soft, almost fragile, like she was testing the air. But even that single note made something shift in the room. The whispering stopped. The rustling stopped. It was as if everyone suddenly realized they had underestimated something important. May's voice grew stronger. It rose from somewhere deep inside her, a place she had kept locked away for 30 years. The melody filled the auditorium, reaching into every corner, every seat, every heart. It was not a perfect voice in the way trained singers have perfect voices. It was something more. It was real. It was raw. It was full of every joy and every sorrow she had ever known. The song was about loss, about loving someone so much that when they are gone, a part of you goes with them, about carrying that empty space inside you for the rest of your life. May did not just sing the words, she lived them. Every note carried the weight of her father's accident, her abandoned dreams, her lonely marriage, her mother's death, all those years of silence. In the third row, a woman in her 60s pressed a hand to her chest. Tears started rolling down her cheeks, and she did not bother to wipe them away. She had lost her own mother 2 years ago. And something about May's voice made her feel understood, in a way she had not felt since. A teenage boy near the back, who had come only because his friend was competing, found himself unable to look away. He did not know why, but his throat felt tight. He thought about his grandmother, who was sick at home, and how he had not visited her in weeks because he was too busy with his own life. The judges sat frozen. The man in the suit had stopped looking bored. His pen hung in the air, forgotten. The woman with red lipstick had put down her notepad and was staring at May like she was seeing something impossible. The older judge, the one with gray hair who had seemed so unimpressed before, leaned forward in his chair. His eyes were wet. May did not see any of this. Her eyes were still closed. She was not on that stage anymore. She was back home, in that small kitchen, standing next to her mother. She was 12 years old again, learning this song for the first time. Her mother's voice blended with hers, and for a few precious minutes, the distance between life and death did not seem so far. The song reached its climax. May's voice soared, filling every inch of the auditorium with a sound so pure and powerful that people later said they felt it in their bones. It was the kind of voice that made you believe in things you had stopped believing in, the kind that reminded you of every person you had ever loved and lost. The kind that made you want to call your mother, hold your children, forgive the people who had hurt you. A man in the middle section, a businessman who had only come because his daughter was competing, found himself crying for the first time in 20 years. He did not even know what he was crying about. Maybe everything. Maybe nothing. Maybe just the realization that life was short, and he had been wasting so much of it on things that did not matter. Near the front, a young woman who had smirked at May in the waiting room sat with her mouth slightly open. She was a trained vocalist. She had spent years perfecting her technique, learning breath control, studying famous singers. But what May was doing up there was something no teacher could teach. It was something you either had or you did not. And this woman, for all her training, knew she did not have it. Not like this. The final verse came. May's voice grew softer now, more tender. She was no longer singing with power. She was singing with surrender, with acceptance, with peace. The melody slowed, each note hanging in the air like a whisper. And then, the last note. May held it gently, letting it fade naturally, like a candle burning down to its end. When it was gone, silence filled the room. Complete, absolute silence. The kind of silence that happens when a large group of people all hold their breath at the same time. May opened her eyes. For a second, she did not know where she was. The bright lights blinded her. The silence confused her. She thought maybe she had done something wrong. Maybe they were all just waiting for her to leave so they could move on to the next contestant. But then she saw the older judge. He was standing. His chair had been pushed back, and he was on his feet, his hands coming together in a slow, steady clap. The woman with red lipstick stood next, then the man in the suit, and then, like a wave, the entire audience rose. One by one, row by row, until every single person in that auditorium was standing. The applause started small but grew louder and louder until it filled the room like thunder. People were crying and clapping at the same time. Some were shaking their heads in disbelief. Others were hugging strangers next to them, caught up in the emotion of the moment. May stood at the microphone, frozen. She did not know what to do. She had never expected this. She had prepared herself for laughter, for rejection, for embarrassment. She had not prepared herself for this. Her legs felt weak. Her hands were trembling. She looked out at all those faces, all those strangers who had doubted her just minutes ago, and she saw something she had not seen in a very long time. She saw belief. They believed in her. These people who did not know her name, who did not know her story, who had judged her the moment she walked on stage, they believed in her now, and that belief, shining back at her from hundreds of eyes, broke something open inside her. Tears started streaming down her face. She tried to speak, to say thank you, to say anything. But no words would come, so she just stood there. A 51-year-old cleaning lady in a thrift store dress, crying in front of a standing crowd. And for the first time in 30 years, she did not feel invisible. She felt seen. The applause went on and on. It showed no sign of stopping. And somewhere in the back of May's mind, a quiet voice whispered something she had almost forgotten was true. It was her mother's voice. "I always knew," it said. "I always knew you were meant for something bigger." The applause finally began to fade, but May still could not move. Her feet felt like they were glued to the stage. The lights were still bright in her eyes, and the tears were still wet on her cheeks. She did not know what to do next. No one had told her what happens after you finish singing. The older judge, the one with gray hair, raised his hand. The audience slowly quieted down, returning to their seats, though many were still wiping their eyes. He looked at May for a long moment before he spoke. "I have been doing this for 23 years, he said. His voice was calm but heavy with emotion. I have seen thousands of performers on stages like this one. Young people, old people, trained professionals, complete beginners. And I want to tell you something. He paused, and the room held its breath. What you just did up there, he continued, is something I have not seen in a very, very long time. That was not just singing. That was truth. That was a lifetime of feeling, poured into 3 minutes. And I do not know who you are or where you came from, but I know this. You belong on a stage. May's hands flew to her mouth. She shook her head slightly, as if she could not believe what she was hearing. The woman judge with red lipstick leaned into her microphone. Her voice was softer now, nothing like the cold, businesslike tone she had used before. I wrote something on my notepad when you first walked out, she admitted. I wrote, not likely. I am ashamed to say that. I looked at you and made a judgment before you even opened your mouth. And I was wrong. I was so wrong. You just taught me something important tonight, and I want to thank you for that. The man in the suit, who had looked so bored earlier, cleared his throat. He seemed uncomfortable, like he was not used to showing emotion in public. I do not have fancy words, he said. I just want to say that I felt that. In here. He tapped his chest. And I do not feel things easily. So, well done. Really. Well done. The audience erupted into applause again. May finally managed to whisper a shaky, "Thank you," into the microphone, before a staff member gently guided her off the stage. Her legs felt like they might give out at any moment. She walked through the curtain and into the darkness of the backstage area, and the moment she was out of sight, she broke down completely. She leaned against a wall and sobbed. Not sad sobs. These were different. These were the kind of tears that come when something inside you finally lets go. All the years of holding back, of staying quiet, of making herself small, all the grief for her mother that she had never fully released, all the dreams she had buried so deep she thought they were dead. It all came pouring out of her in that dark hallway, and she could not stop it even if she wanted to. A hand touched her shoulder. May looked up to see a young woman standing there. It was the same girl who had smiled at her so unkindly in the waiting room, the one with perfect makeup and shiny hair. But she did not look unkind now. She looked like she had been crying too. "I am sorry," the young woman said quietly. "I am so sorry for the way I looked at you earlier. I thought I knew what talent looked like. I thought it looked like youth and training and expensive clothes. But I was wrong. You have something I have never heard before. Something I do not even know how to describe." May wiped her eyes and shook her head. "You do not have to apologize." "Yes, I do," the young woman insisted. "I came here thinking I was going to win this whole thing. I have been preparing for months. But after hearing you, I realized something. I have been so focused on being perfect that I forgot to be real. You reminded me why I started singing in the first place. So thank you. Really." Before May could respond, the young woman gave her a quick hug and walked away. May stood there, stunned. She had expected mockery. She had expected people to laugh at her behind her back. She had not expected this. More contestants came by as the evening went on. Some just nodded at her with respect. Others stopped to shake her hand or tell her how much her performance had moved them. A boy who looked barely 18 told her that he had called his mother right after watching her sing, just to say he loved her. An older man, another contestant in his 60s, told her that she had given him the courage to keep going, even though he had almost dropped out earlier that day. May listened to all of them with a kind of quiet wonder. She had come here expecting to be invisible, the way she had been invisible her whole life. But somehow, in the span of one song, everything had changed. The competition continued for several more hours. Other contestants performed, some of them very good, some of them incredible. May watched from backstage, genuinely cheering for each one. She was not thinking about winning anymore. She was not even thinking about herself. She was just grateful. Grateful that she had come. Grateful that she had not run away. Grateful that, for one night, she had let herself be seen. Finally, at nearly 11 o'clock, All the contestants were called back to the stage. The host stood in the center with a microphone, a big smile on his face. The audience was buzzing with anticipation. "What a night it has been," the host said. "We have seen some truly incredible talent. But now, it is time to announce who will be moving forward." May stood near the back of the group. She was the oldest person there by at least 20 years. She looked out at the audience and thought about how different she felt from the woman who had stepped off that bus just hours ago. That woman had been terrified. That woman had wanted to disappear. But this woman, the one standing here now, felt strangely at peace. Whatever happened next, she had already won something far more valuable than any trophy. The host began announcing the names of those who would advance. One by one, contestants stepped forward, hugging each other, crying with joy. May clapped for each of them, genuinely happy for their success, and then the host paused. He looked down at his card, then back up at the audience with a knowing smile. "And our final contestant moving forward to the next round," he said slowly, stretching out the suspense. "Someone who I think none of us will forget anytime soon." May's heart stopped. Number 47. For a second, she did not move. She could not move. The number did not feel real. She looked down at the sticker on her dress, the one with 47 printed on it in thick black ink, and she still could not believe it. The young woman from earlier nudged her forward. "That is you," she whispered with a grin. "Go." May walked to the front of the stage on legs that barely worked. The audience was on their feet again, clapping and cheering like she was some kind of hero. The judges were smiling at her. The other contestants were applauding, and May, the cleaning lady from a small town who had almost thrown away her registration form twice, stood in the spotlight and let herself feel something she had not felt in 30 years. Hope. Real, burning, unstoppable hope. She had spent her whole life putting everyone else first. She had given up her dreams so her family could survive. She had made herself small so her husband could feel big. She had hidden her voice so she would not bother anyone, but not anymore. As she stood on that stage, surrounded by strangers who were now cheering her name, May made a quiet promise to herself. No matter what happened next, no matter how far she went in this competition, she was never going to hide again. She was finally going to let herself be heard. May did not win the competition. She came in third place, behind a young pianist with hands that moved like water, and a teenage girl whose voice could shatter glass. When the final results were announced, May clapped harder than anyone else in the room. She hugged both winners and told them they deserved every bit of their success, and she meant it. But here is the thing about that night. Winning was never really the point. The morning after the competition, May took the long bus ride back home. She was tired in her bones, the kind of tired that comes after something big leaves your body. She leaned her head against the window and watched the world pass by. And for the first time in years, the world looked different. Brighter somehow. Fuller. When she got home, she made herself a cup of tea, sat in her small kitchen, and just breathed. The house was quiet, the same way it had always been quiet. But the silence did not feel lonely anymore. It felt peaceful. She did not know yet that her life was about to change in ways she could never have imagined. 3 days later, May went back to work at the middle school. She mopped the hallways like she always did. She wiped down the desks and emptied the trash cans. Everything was normal, but when she walked into the teacher's lounge to clean, something strange happened. A teacher she had never spoken to before looked up from her phone and gasped. "It is you," the teacher said. "Oh my goodness, it is really you." May had no idea what she was talking about. The teacher turned her phone around, and there, on the small screen, was May. Standing on that stage, singing. The video had a title that read, "Cleaning Lady Silences Mocking Crowd with Incredible Voice," and underneath it, a number that made May's heart stop. 4 million views. Someone in the audience had recorded her performance and posted it online. Within 3 days, it had spread across the entire internet. People from all over the world were watching, commenting, sharing. News websites were writing articles about her. Radio stations were talking about her. Everyone wanted to know who this woman was and where she had come from. May sat down slowly. She did not know how to process what she was seeing. Over the next few weeks, her life became something out of a dream. Her phone, which usually only rang when her brothers called on holidays, started ringing constantly. Reporters wanted to interview her, talk shows wanted her to appear, music producers wanted to meet her. A famous singer she had admired her whole life posted the video on her own page with a caption that said, "This is what real music sounds like." But the messages that meant the most to May were not from famous people or reporters. They were from ordinary people. Thousands of them. A woman in another country wrote to say that she had been thinking about giving up on her art. But after watching May's video, she decided to try again. A man in his 70s said he had not sung since his wife died 10 years ago. But May's performance made him want to sing again, just for himself. A teenager wrote that she had been bullied for her voice, told she was not good enough. But seeing May prove everyone wrong gave her the courage to sign up for her school's talent show. The letters kept coming, hundreds of them, then thousands. People who felt invisible, people who had buried their dreams, people who thought it was too late. They all saw themselves in May, and she read every single message, often with tears in her eyes. One letter stood out from the rest. It was from a woman who said she was a nurse at a hospital in a city May had never heard of. The nurse wrote that she had played May's video for a patient, an elderly woman who was very sick and did not have much time left. The patient had watched the whole performance with tears streaming down her face, and when it ended, she had whispered, "Tell that woman thank you. Tell her she helped me remember what it feels like to hope." May held that letter in her hands for a long time. She thought about her own mother, and how much her mother would have loved to see this moment. And she realized something important. She had spent her whole life believing that her dreams had been stolen from her, that when she gave up that scholarship, she had lost her chance forever. But maybe that was not true. Maybe her chance had just been waiting. Maybe all those years of pain and sacrifice and silence were not wasted. Maybe they were what made her voice so powerful now. Because she had lived. She had loved and lost and suffered and survived, and all of that living had poured into her singing. You cannot fake that kind of truth. You can only earn it. 6 months after the competition, May released her first song. It was a simple recording, just her voice and a piano, made in a small studio that a local musician offered to let her use for free. She did not expect much from it. She just wanted to share something real. The song reached #1 in 3 countries. May still could not quite believe it. She kept waiting for someone to tell her it was all a mistake, that they had confused her with someone else. But it was not a mistake. It was real. After 51 years of waiting, her time had finally come. She went on to perform at concerts, not in huge stadiums, but in theaters and community halls and places where she could see people's faces. She did not want to be a celebrity. She just wanted to sing and connect with people who needed to hear what she had to say, and she never forgot where she came from. She went back to the middle school. Not to clean, but to speak to the students. She told them her story. She told them about the dreams she had given up and the years she had spent hiding. And she told them the most important lesson she had ever learned. "It is never too late," she said, standing in front of a room full of young faces. I know that sounds like something people just say, but I am living proof that it is true. I was 51 years old when I stepped on that stage. I had not sung in front of anyone in 30 years. I thought my chance was gone forever. And your chance is not gone either. No matter how old you are, no matter how many people have told you no, no matter how long you have been waiting, your moment is still out there, waiting for you to be brave enough to take it. May still lives in the same small town. She still has rough hands and an aching back. She still drinks tea alone in her kitchen on quiet mornings. But now, she also has something else. She has a voice that the whole world has heard. She has letters from strangers who call her an inspiration. She has a life that finally feels like her own. and she has a folded piece of paper that she keeps in her pocket wherever she goes. It is old and worn now, the creases soft from being opened so many times. It is the flyer that blew against her leg on that ordinary afternoon, the one that asked, "Do you have what it takes?" May smiles every time she looks at it. Turns out, she did.